What's up, YouTube? And welcome to my pickups video for the month of November 2024. Didn't do a whole lot of travel this month. I visited Kansas City on a work trip early in the month and got a couple things there, but otherwise I was pretty much stuck at home base for the rest of the month. So got a few things throughout the month, some things online, some things found locally in stores. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So I did get a new release this month, which I haven't bought many lately, and that is on the PS4. It's the new Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection by Capcom, of course. And this was a release that I was looking forward to, although I really didn't need it because I have all these games as standalone releases. Big fan of this series. I would say of all the Capcom fighting games, I have a big weak spot for the Marvel vs. Capcom series games, as well as X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, X-Men, Marvel Superheroes, all that stuff that's included on the collection. These have always been favorites of mine, just for the very colorful rosters on both camps, and also the fun fighting style. Like I said, I have all these games on either Japanese Saturn, US Saturn, US PS1, US Dreamcast, you name it. But it was nice having all these compiled together. And then you get some nice galleries and artwork and stuff like that that's included as well. I think the one thing that made the compilation unique is Capcom also included the Punisher arcade game in here, which was not a fighting game. It was more of an action beat-em-up. And we did get a version of that on the Sega Genesis, but that really wasn't that great. So nice to have a quality version of that to come home for the first time. Again, enjoying playing this so far. I'm not doing any of the online stuff with it, but it is fun to play even offline. Kind of makes me want to get a fighting stick for the PS4, even though I never had one up to this point. But definitely a lot of fun playing this. And I guess the other thing is just maybe this is going to be one of the last hurrahs for the PS4. I thought it was interesting they didn't release this for the PS5. It came out on the Switch, but no PS5 version. And it makes me think that they were just counting on some of the old school people like me that haven't made the jump to PS5, knowing that even if we get a PS5, we can still play this on that system. So fingers crossed I may be getting one of those soon, and we'll enjoy playing this on the PS5 as well. I think the last thing that was just a nice bonus included with this is it did include a comic book with it, which is always nice to see. However, it is very, very small. I think they designed it in this shape just so it would fit in the Nintendo Switch version of the case, but they didn't optimize it for the larger PS4 case. So kind of a fun little read. It was, you know, very lighthearted, that kind of thing. Had some cool artwork in it, but it is very, very small. So nice to get a physical bonus with the disc as well. Since you don't always get that kind of stuff anymore. But that was my one new release for the month. I've been enjoying playing that, and I'm sure I'll be playing some more in the next week or so. But I'm going to move over to some older stuff I got this month. So on the Kansas City trip, it was very strange because I hit a couple game stores out there, and the one thing that was in common that I found on that trip was Sega Master System games, but they weren't at the same location. They were at two separate locations. So not things that I was actively looking for, but I decided to go ahead and grab a couple things along the way. So the first one of these is kind of a surprise and a little bit shameful that I never had this in my Master System collection, but that's Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And this is the start of the Alex Kidd games, of which there were, I think, 5 that came out on the Master System, plus the one we got on the Genesis. This is actually the one I never had, which is very strange because it's probably the most common and best-selling of all of them. I think the one reason is just because typically when I find this game, it seems to be like missing a manual or it's in bad condition or things like that. This one was actually rather nice, and it included the original ad poster as well. So nice to get a complete copy of this in the collection. This was recently re-released on the PS4 and Switch with like a modern remake or version of the game. I don't think that was received very well, so I never bothered to get it. So most likely I'll probably rather play this on the Master System version, but I have kind of mixed feelings for the Alex Kidd series. I'm not going to go out and say they're classics by any means, but I guess if you grew up with Master System and you didn't have a Nintendo, this was probably the closest thing you were going to get to a Mario game. So they are very weird games, and I would say probably not as easy to pick up even for cultural differences as something like Mario. They had some very odd things that go on in these games, and so I would say the other thing that's neat about the Alex Kidd series on the Master System is you have weird stuff like Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, playing in the universe of Shinobi games, which I'm a big fan of. So that one I had to have, and I've had that one for some time. But nice to get a copy of this in the collection. I would say it was definitely a hole in my Sega Master System collection. And then the other thing I got was an upgrade. They had a very rare game for the Master System there that was at a good price, and that's RC Grand Prix. This one's interesting for a few reasons. We got this game very late in the life on the Sega Master System in the US. I think this game came out in 1990. And it was published by Seismic, which was a very small publisher that only released a few games on the Sega Genesis, and I think this was their only Master System game. But they are notable because they were the ones that released Musha for the Sega Genesis, which is one of the most popular and most expensive games on the system if you like shooters. Outside of another shooter and another like air simulation game on the Genesis, it was very odd that they put out this overhead racing game on the Sega Master System. They did not develop the game, however. It was developed by Absolute Entertainment, which typically has a pretty dicey track record, but this is actually a rather fun game. And the other thing that's interesting about this one is we did get it on the Sega Game Gear as well, which is very closely related to the Master System. So this game did come out, that version, not published by Seismic, and it seemed to sell a whole lot better. So I think probably more people would be familiar with this game from that version. But this is very fun to play, and I like the Master System version. So need to get a complete copy of this. The other thing I thought was weird about it is it comes with a European-style Master System manual in that it's presented in this vertical format versus the horizontal format like the US manuals. But this is the US version of it because it says Seismic on the cover, even though there is a Euro version of the game as well. So very weird release. Again, I don't think they made hardly any of these, and kind of a nice bonus that it's a pretty fun game for the Master System. So nice to have an upgraded copy of this. My other copy was missing the manual and was kind of beat up, so nice to get an upgrade for that at a good price. So then I'm going to move over to Sega Game Gear while we're talking about Sega obscurities, and this was an eBay find. This game just very recently came upon my radar, and I started looking it up, and I said, wow, this is something that I definitely want to have in my collection. So I present to you Ganbare Gorby for the Sega Game Gear. And yes, you heard me right, Gorby as in Gorbachev. He is the star of this game, and it was about the fall of communism in a playful action puzzle format for the Sega Game Gear. So in this game, you as Gorby get to help the Russian citizens with food, provisions, medicine, and even Sega Game Gears that you liberate from the communist factory that they're all being housed in or kept from the public with. And so you push buttons within the conveyor belts of the factory, you shoot away the communists in the factory, and then ultimately you get those goods to the public in the game. Very wacky concept, very, very fun, actually. And I'm surprised more people don't talk about this game just for how bizarre it is. I think probably the weirdest thing is that this is a first-party Sega release. So it wasn't even like some obscure company that put this out. This was first-party Sega that went after this game concept. Now, that being said, apparently Sega saw some lucrative market share for this game in other markets, but they also realized that Gorby as a theme probably wasn't going to fly, or maybe they needed to scrub some of the content a little bit for this to be a little bit more universal for Western audiences. So this game did get a release in the European market as Factory Panic, and suddenly the protagonist is now a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy who is doing the factory job of freeing the goods. It has no more communist theme or anything like that attached to it. Unfortunately, we did not get the game in the US, but Factory Panic looks equally good to this, just with a very different theme attached to it. So, very happy to get Ganbare Gorby in my collection. Not something I ever thought existed, and always like to be surprised by Japanese releases like this. So, very fun title to play, and definitely will be playing some more of this over the holidays. But that's not all. I think just the oddity of the Game Gear having a game based on the fall of communism. It's not the only game about the fall of communism on the Game Gear in Japan, and I have the other one already in my collection, so I just wanted to show it to link it up. But this is the Berlin Wall by Kaneko for Sega Game Gear, which is based on the arcade game of the same name. And so just very odd to me that the Game Gear of all systems got all these games about the fall of communism kind of in the same time period as Ganbare Gorby. So anyways, let's move on to some other stuff I got this month. And this was a local find. Got this at a store that just prices all their memory cards a standard price, but notice this was one that I didn't have in my collection, and it's one of the PS1 memory cards, the official ones, that is in this crystal clear casing. I have the solid red casing that is not transparent like this one, but this is a separate one that also came out in the US. So nice to have this just official memory card. I like getting all these that came out in this market. I don't know if I'm going to go for a full set of them, but just anytime I see them in stores and they're cheap, I might as well just go ahead and grab them. It's always good to have extra memory cards, just knowing that some games on the PS1 are total memory hogs, and a few of the titles can use up a whole memory card just to play a single game. So it doesn't hurt to have a few extras of these around, and then having them in different colors makes them easier to tell apart. So it's always a nice bonus. So I got one other thing this month. This was also a PS1 find, of which I just haven't had a whole lot lately. And this was at a local half-price books, and it was very unusual that they were selling this the way that they were. But it was being sold in the box with the accessory, but no game. And so it was marked way down. Honestly, it didn't matter to me because I already had the game separate, so now I have it complete in the big box, and that is Time Crisis. This is the first version of the game, or the first big box GunCon game that we got in the US, of which there were several that came out for the PS1 and PS2. But basically the original package of this was you got Time Crisis in the jewel case, you got a GunCon as well as a manual, and then an advertisement for for Point Blank, which was the next GunCon big box game that came out. They also released the game just separate in the jewel case, so not everybody bought it this way, and so I guess maybe that's one reason why it got separated from the box itself. I don't think I'm going to go for all these just because they take up a ton of space. There's all 3 Point Blank games that have big box variants as well, and then also the sequel to Time Crisis. So 5 big box games just for the PS1 alone. And also the GunCons that would entail, just having extra around as well. But neat to get this. I always thought this one was cool. I remember when this one came out in the store, and I was working in video game retail at the time, and we had to make a special place just to even display this because our display racks weren't made to hold something in such an unusual size box. So definitely a neat little relic of the time period, and happy to get this in really the format that I needed at a lower price without having to rebuy the game itself. So neat to get this, and always been a fan of these GunCon games as well, just because they have really good accuracy for how they play too. So anyways, that about does it. Hope you enjoyed seeing all the stuff I got this month. Thank you very much for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.